What if one of the best things you could do for fat loss and body composition was actually to make your diet simpler? Not bland, not restrictive, and definitely not chicken, broccoli, and rice 7 days a week. I mean, eating more of the same meals on repeat. Because if you're on a fitness or body recomposition journey, or you simply want to shed some excess body fat, one of the most underrated strategies for success is what I call meals on repeat. Essentially, you choose a breakfast, a lunch, snack, and a dinner that you enjoy that fits into your nutritional targets, and you repeat them for the whole week. It sounds ridiculously simple, and that is precisely the point because when it comes to changing your body, the perfect nutrition plan that you follow occasionally is nowhere near as effective as a good nutrition plan that you can follow consistently. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Linda Vizzoli. I'm a nutritional therapist and health coach and senior lecturer at the College of Naturopathic Medicine in London. I help women understand their hormones, restore their energy, and feel confident in their bodies again through simple nutrition and lifestyle shifts, which honor our unique female physiology. So, today I want to explain why repeating your meals can make getting results so much easier, why it doesn't have to mean sacrificing nutrition or enjoyment, and exactly how I recommend doing it when I work with my clients. Now, you've probably heard me say this. Most people don't struggle with nutrition because they don't know what they should be eating, right? We all know about protein, we all know about carbs, and how eating ultra processed foods all the time is not going to help us achieve our goals, right? But the difficult part is actually doing what we know consistently. And I see this all the time. Someone is really good. I say this in quotation marks because you know what I mean. Monday to Friday, and then the weekend arrives and everything goes out the window. Or you have one brilliant week, then life gets busy. You haven't planned your meals. You're hungry at 6 o'clock. There's nothing in the fridge. And suddenly you're back to grabbing whatever is easiest. And then we tend to berate ourselves for not being disciplined enough. I know this because I have been there and I have done that. I've got multiple t shirts, but I don't think that the answer is necessarily more discipline. I think we need to make nutrition that requires fewer decisions. And that's where meals on repeat comes in. So instead of asking yourself 3 or 4 times every day, what am I going to eat? Is this going to be, does this fit into my goals? Does this fit into my macros? You've already decided breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, dessert sorted for the week. You already know what you need to buy. You already know how to prepare it. And if you're tracking your nutrition, you already know that these meals fit into your targets. So you are essentially removing dozens of tiny decisions from your weeks. And fewer decisions means fewer opportunities for things to go off track. Now, having said that, this sounds very simple, but this is where I get so much pushback from clients. Linda, I can't eat the same thing every day. That's just so boring. And I get it. We've all been told how important dietary diversity is, particularly for gut health. And yes, over the long term, I absolutely want you eating a varied, nutrient dense diet. But meals on repeat doesn't mean eating 5 foods for the rest of your life. We're talking about creating structure within the week and then changing things around from week to week. And I'm going to challenge this pushback with this. Most people already eat a relatively small number of meals on repeat anyway. Think about what you've eaten over the past month. You probably haven't eaten 90 completely different meals. Most families have their favorite 10 or 12 dinners that appear again and again. And most people I know eat the same 1 or 2 breakfasts most days. Or what I often see is that they skip breakfast, which is obviously a whole other subject. So we're already creatures of habit. I'm simply suggesting that if you have a specific goal, you can make these habits work for you. Now, there is one very important rule here if you're considering meals on repeat. Please don't choose meals that you hate just because someone on Instagram told you that they're good for fat loss. If you don't enjoy your food, you're not going to want to eat it. If you're dreading your evening meal, and you're staring sadly at a piece of dry chicken and some steamed broccoli while streaming about something else, that isn't a particularly sustainable strategy. The reason I'm able to stay consistent with my nutrition is that I eat foods that I genuinely enjoy. And this is something that I always do with my clients as well. We don't start by throwing away everything that they currently eat and then handing them a completely different diet. We look at things like, what foods do you love? What meals does your family already eat? What breakfasts and lunches do you genuinely look forward to? Then we adapt those meals so that they can better support the goal of the client. Maybe we change the portion sizes, or we add more carbohydrates or protein to balance it out. Maybe we slightly adjust the fat portion. So you're not building a temporary diet, like the ones in the magazines that I used to read when I was younger. You're actually building a collection of meals that you actually want to keep eating. So why does this work so well for body recomposition? There is a benefit to meals on repeat that I think is massively underrated. One of the things that this does is that it reduces variables. So if you're trying to assess whether your nutrition strategy is actually working, consistency makes your data much easier to interpret because your body weight can actually fluctuate significantly for day to day for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with gaining or losing body fat. Different meals can contain different amounts of carbohydrates, of fiber, sodium, or simply different volumes of food. And all of those things can affect digestion. They can affect water retention, and therefore you can see changes on the scales. For women, of course, there's also hormonal fluctuations across the menstrual cycle that can add another layer of variation. So instead of obsessing over individual weigh ins, I much prefer looking at trends, things like the average weight across the week, our measurements, our photos, how our clothes fit. And if you're training, what your performance is like. Are you actually getting better week by week, or are you feeling weaker? So when your nutrition is relatively consistent, you've removed some of that noise, and that makes it much easier to assess what's actually happening and make sensible adjustments. Is this nutrition plan working for me? You can see that if you're eating the same thing week after week versus just changing your meals day in, day out. The other benefit to meals on repeat is that food tracking becomes so much easier. So instead of opening your tracking app at every meal and trying to enter completely different foods and recipes every single day, you can pre-plan the entire day. And this is something that I really strongly recommend. Don't wait until you've eaten something and then discover afterwards that you've accidentally used up 70% of your calories by lunchtime and barely eaten any protein or have overeaten fat. Plan first, eat second. And if you've planned a day that gives you the protein, carbs, fats, and overall caloric intake that you're aiming for, then repeating that day means that you've essentially solved the nutrition puzzle for the week, and you don't need to keep solving it every morning. So, what does this actually look like in practice? I'm going to tell you, my friend. First of all, you want to identify what your total daily energy expenditure is, right? Your TDEE, your energy requirements, and establish your calorie and macronutrient targets if you're looking to track your food. Now, remember, if you haven't done this before, these are always starting estimates rather than magical numbers that your body's obliged to obey. If you eat the same thing for a week and then assess, you can see whether this is enough for you, or if it's not enough, how is it working, for example. Next, choose a breakfast that you enjoy. Choose a lunch. Choose your snacks if you're having them. Choose your dinner. Put in dessert. I actually always put in dessert first when I'm tracking my food and planning my week. So look at the whole day rather than individual meals. Does it hit all your targets? And importantly, would you enjoy eating this? Once you've created a day that works, save those meals. Then shop for what you need and batch prep whatever you can. That doesn't necessarily mean spending your entire Sunday filling 25 identical plastic containers with the same exact meal. You could cook a big batch of protein. You could wash and chop vegetables, cook some rice or potatoes, prepare a big batch of bolognese ragu. And then assembling the meals during the week takes 5 minutes instead of starting from scratch every time. Next, repeat those meals for the week. Then at the weekend, review. Did you enjoy them? Were you hungry? Did you feel satisfied? How was your energy? How did your training feel? How did you sleep? This is a massive marker. And what is your weight or measurement trend doing? Is it going up? Is it going down? And then you can plan for the following week. You can keep the meals that you loved and swap out the ones you're tired of, or you could change the protein source, change the carb source. Instead of having rice, have potatoes. Instead of having beef, have chicken or some fish. So you're getting variety across the time without having endless variety every single day. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. That's lovely, Linda, but I have a family, and there's absolutely no chance that they're going to be eating the same dinner 7 nights in a row. And I completely understand because I have a family too, and I don't make everyone eat the same dinner every night. What I tend to do is I keep breakfast, lunch, and snacks completely consistent and the same, and then I rotate dinner throughout the week. So I have 3 or 4 dinner templates that have similar calories and macros that fit into my day, and then I rotate them throughout the week. And these are normal family friendly meals. Now, in our house, that might be something like spaghetti with a bolognese ragu, or burrito bowls, or we do prawn egg fried rice. We make lasagna, meatballs, and couscous. We have tacos. So these aren't diet foods, they're meals. The difference is that I understand how they fit into my overall nutrition. So I'll often cook something like a big batch of meat ragu or meatballs so that we can use it more than once during the week. So perhaps Monday and Thursday are pasta with a ragu sauce. Tuesday, I'll add some fajita seasoning to the sauce and declare it taco night. On Wednesdays and Fridays, I might use the same batch of meatballs, but have them with rice one night, or with couscous and a Greek salad on another night. So you don't have to reinvent dinner 7 nights a week. Your family gets some variety. You're not cooking separate diet food for yourself, and you still have enough consistency to stay close to your targets. Now, meals on repeat is not something that I made up. It's actually a concept that it was introduced to me by my own coach, but this has a lot of research behind it already. There was a study in 2026 published in Health Psychology that looked at 112 adults participating in behavioral weight loss programs, and they analyzed their food logs over the first 12 weeks. And the researchers looked at things including how stable caloric intake was from day to day, and how much participants repeated the foods that they ate. And they found that there were the greater dietary repetition and greater day-to-day calorie stability were associated with greater weight loss. So participants whose logged foods were mostly repeats lost an average of 5.9% of their body weight, compared with 4.3 amongst participants whose food logs contained mostly unique foods. Now, before you come at me, this was an observational analysis, but it supports something that makes a lot of sense from a behavioral perspective. Routine reduces effort, and habit research has long suggested that repeating behaviors in consistent context can help those behaviors become increasingly automatic. That's important because successful nutrition shouldn't require you to have like an internal argument with yourself at every single meal. The goal is for some of these behaviors to just become habits. They become your default, right? So you wake up, you know what your breakfast is, you open the fridge at lunchtime, and you know what you're having, rather than shoveling cheese standing in the kitchen, which is something I've definitely done before. You do the grocery shop and you already know what goes into the trolley. You're spending less mental energy negotiating with yourself about food for every single meal. Now, I've said this again, you probably heard me say this, but I think we massively overcomplicate nutrition because complexity may feel more sophisticated. We think we need a new recipe every evening, 27 different superfoods, a cupboard full of supplements, perfect meal timing, a complicated protocol. But for body composition, the fundamentals are much less glamorous. You need enough calories, you need enough carbs and protein, you need nutrient-dense foods, you need to build muscle for that toned physique that we're all after. And you need to get enough sleep, you need to get enough recovery, and then you need to do those things consistently enough for long enough to see a result. This is not a quick fix. You may need to actually commit to doing this for 6 to 12 months minimum. And then you might need to carry on doing them for longer as well to maintain your results. Now, obviously, you won't need to be as strict as if you were doing like a fat loss phase as well, but those habits need to be consistent for you to maintain the results. And that's the part that people mostly underestimate. And meals on repeat make that consistency easier. So, my bottom line is this: less variables make consistency easier because simplicity removes barriers. And when you remove barriers, you rely less on motivation and willpower. I've talked about this in a different video. It's not about motivation, it's about consistency. So, I challenge you to try this for 1 week. Choose one breakfast, one lunch, one or two snacks if needed, dessert, and then either one dinner or a small rotation of family friendly dinners. Pre plan them, shop for them, prep what you can, and then notice what happens, not only to your nutrition, but to your mental load as well. Do you think less about food throughout the day? Are you finding that shopping is a little bit easier? Or, if you're tracking your food, is it taking less time? Are you less likely to find yourself standing in the kitchen at 7 o'clock wondering what on earth you're going to prepare for dinner tonight? Because creating that system that makes consistency the easiest option is the true secret sauce to achieving your goals. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever tried eating the same meals for a week? And if you haven't, what's the biggest barrier to doing it? Is it boredom, family meals, planning, or something else? If you'd like to go deeper into this work, I also have an online self-led program with group coaching called the Midlife Reset. It's designed to guide you through this process step by step, and it's my flagship program built from more than a decade of clinical experience working with hundreds of women alongside my teaching work at CNM in London. I've popped some details in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.